Warning, there are spoilers ahead from the expansion to Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Star Wars Knights of the Eternal Throne. I would suggest you guys either go watch the Let's Play I posted a while back over the first 4 chapters, which is what this one's over, review-wise, or you go play the expansion to see what the game entails. From this moment on, you have had your warning. Let's get into the review. So the first chapter, I actually really did enjoy this chapter, from the storyline to getting to control the walker. Out of all the chapters within the new expansion, Knights of the Eternal Throne, I really liked this walker. There's another chapter that you get to control a walker in, and it came nowhere near as cool as the walker in this one. The skills meshed very nicely together. I absolutely loved the fact of how you could pull all the enemies together and then just bombard them and they would all just die. It was very nice, very smooth. It was a great walker. I was very glad to see it in this. It made me feel invincible, which isn't always the point, but I liked that walker. The boss fight on the walker, however, could have been a little bit more difficult, because as long as you kept moving around it and avoided the AoE, it was relatively easy. You didn't have to use many of the skills. Yes, you could use the skills to pull the adds together into the boss to be able to bombard them too, but after some of the actual fights and encounters were a little bit more difficult than that boss fight. It was still a fun fight, a fun part of the chapter. I enjoyed seeing it, and I wish that it had been just as good with the rest of the other chapters, walker-wise, but I was glad to see that that walker was in there. Another matter relating to Chapter 1 was the Empire showing up at the end. I knew that they would eventually, but it was really cool to finally see more from the Empire. The fact that it was them and not the Republic who came in to the rescue for the Alliance commander added a very nice touch. It was as if the Force that we've seen as bad, especially if you played like a Jedi Knight like I was, came in and did something really good. Sure, it was for mutual benefit, but it was still really nice to see, and I loved that little touch. Now, Cinia. Well, I've always liked Cinia as a character. On my original main, which was a Sith Inquisitor, I always ran with Cinia as my main companion until I got HK back, that new HK, not the old HK. But Cinia, in and of herself, I liked her a lot. She was probably one of my favorite characters in Knights of the Eternal Empire, and I was really, really sad when we lost her as a companion. I was so happy to see her come back right away in the chapter. It was wonderful to get her back. Of course, I played through the original storyline where I didn't kill her in Arkan, so it tied in nicely. I have yet to play through Darkside to see what that would be like. I might have a different opinion after I play the Darkside storyline, but so far I felt like it was really nice to see her. It was also really nice to see a lot of the companions in this storyline, even though we had to run around with Lana. I don't mind Lana. But another thing with Cinia, I also liked how she was so willing to give herself in order to save her son. It fits so perfectly with everything we knew about her character that it just was so beautiful to see. Yes, it was depressing that she wasn't actually back as a companion after the first chapter, but she was still in the storyline and still a major part of the storyline. That was great. Now, the last pro for the chapter was Arkan's reaction wasn't really a shock at the end of the chapter. In fact, I expected him to run away from us. I didn't expect him to trust us at all. After all, we spent the vast majority of the last expansion trying to kill him. Yeah, I would run too. But what I really liked as a part of his character in this was the change in his eye color from a yellowish orange to a blue, which showed that he was going to be a slightly new character in this new expansion. He was now going to be turning to a good guy. It was a lot of foreshadowing there, especially considering Star Wars puts a lot on the eyes changing color. being the goldish color when you're evil and being a more normal color when you're good. That was wonderful, wonderful foreshadowing there, and I absolutely loved it. A matter that I also really liked was the fact that we got a return to Voss. It had been a while since I had been on Voss, probably since the last playthrough of a character that I was leveling up. I liked returning to it. It had also been a while since I'd been on Voss as a Republic character. I mean, I think the last time was literally on that Jedi Knight that I was playing through as, and it was just nice because I love Voss as a planet. There's not much to do there after a while. I go there every now and again for heroics, but the main city I never actually have to go to do the heroics, and just being back on Voss was nice. It's such a beautiful world that I had missed it a lot, and to see it come back as a piece of one of the stories in the expansion was just wonderful to see. A problem I had with the expansion almost right away was the fact within both the trailers and at the very end of the very first chapter, it hints to the fact that we have to take the throne from Valen, and Valkorion is trying to be sly. You can tell in his dialogue he's trying to be sly about what he's doing, but knowing his personality, his history, and his character, especially if you played as a Jedi Knight or another class who had to deal with him, or basically just to anybody, just knowing Valkorion as we do, we kind of know what he's trying to do. And the fact that he keeps doing this through even just chapter 1 in and of itself at the end, it is just so obvious what he wants from us and what he's planning on doing. Yes, I might have been a little bit shocked at the end of chapter 9, but looking back at it now and rereading the dialogue and having time to look at this, it's just like, holy cow, you guys were not laying that on thick, not one bit. Sarcasm there. But I do understand why we had to take the throne. It makes perfect sense. I just wish it hadn't been laid on as thick, and that Valkorion might have been a little bit more sly in what he was planning. It would have been a little bit more of a shock at the end. Just a little bit. By the Force. I absolutely loved this chapter. If there was one disappointment, though, it was the fact we couldn't keep the Empress as a companion. I know it was a not unrealistic thought, but all through the playthrough of this, I was just like, I love this character. I want her as a companion so badly. And yes, I realize it does make sense why she wouldn't be. She is the Empress of the Empire. It doesn't make sense to keep her as a companion. She does have an empire to run, but still, even playing a Jedi Knight, I loved the dynamic between the main protagonist of the story, or player character, you, and the Empress. It was just wonderful to see. I loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. Also, when we got to the tomb in this chapter, oh my god, KOTOR reference anybody. I remember going through those tombs in the first game and having to solve puzzles, especially in the last tomb. And while the puzzle was not nearly as complex as the one that we had to solve in KOTOR, at least from my memory of KOTOR, I don't have a working version of KOTOR on my computer, so I haven't replayed it recently, but it was nice to see a little tiny puzzle come back. It was nice to see that you had to look for the traps and look for the bonus part of this. It was a bonus, so obviously not everyone had to do it, but I do miss the puzzles that were in the original game, and I wish I would see them come back fully in the MMO. It makes sense to why it's not everyone enjoys puzzles, but it was still really nice to see, especially with the traps and the puzzles and all that fun stuff. It was a complete callback to KOTOR in my mind. It was very, very nice to see. The entire story for this chapter was kind of predictable. I figured from the moment that we went into the shuttle that something would happen. Obviously, you need something to happen, otherwise the player ends up watching a cutscene through the entirety of the chapter, and you're just like, why am I here? This isn't playable. This isn't exactly fun just to watch a cutscene for some people. But it was predictable that we would be betrayed. Obviously, we are in the Empire. That is like the one thing you expect from Sith is to be constantly betrayed. I didn't know who the betrayal would come from, and after a while it became a little bit clear who it was, mainly because it was blatantly obvious after a little bit of just watching. It was still a good chapter. As I said, I really, really loved it, despite the fact we didn't get to keep the Empress. Again, it makes sense. She's going to be an important character down the road with later expansions, especially with the way the entire story ends. But I just loved this chapter, and I cannot wait to see what they do with the Empress going forward. I cannot wait to see what they do with the Empire going forward. Anyway, on to Chapter 3. Oh my god, gameplay as a mouse droid. That is my entire summary of this chapter. I'm kidding, that is not the entire summary of this chapter. The mouse droid for the chapter was both very fun and extremely annoying. Yeah, I don't know how many times I had to restart that mouse droid part of the mission to be able to get through it. It was just a little difficult for me, I guess. I suck at stealth. One of the things about this chapter was it was very much a tie-in to the trailer. It was kind of how we learn Valen's one weakness, very convenient weakness. Thank you for that, Valkorian. This chapter I knew had to be coming sooner or later, especially with the tie-in and how we needed something to help us stop Valen because she's very overpowered. Yeah. One of my biggest qualms with this chapter is I already didn't really like Koth, especially since his name reminds me of Karth's. Don't ask about that one. It made me dislike him even more. I mean, who plants a bomb like that on their ship and doesn't expect it to have complications later on down the line? Sure, I mean, I get why he doesn't want the ship to fall into enemy hands, but to not even tell anyone about it? Alright, I get the story aspect, but still, it's just, why, Koth? Why? You love this ship and you want to blow it up with a quantum bomb? What? Okay. I follow, it's just... okay. It still felt like a lot of busy work for the chapter. Most of it was going around trying to make sure you deactivated the quantum bomb within a set time limit. Okay. Now, despite my problems with Koth here, I did like the chapter for the fact it did stick to certain characters' personalities. Valen would sneak onto the ship the way she snuck onto the ship. Koth would want us to be saving everyone, which is a lot like the Jedi Knight, come to think about it, but that's light side Jedi Knight, not dark side Jedi Knight who wants to kill everybody. Then the Emperor pulling out a new hat trick from his sleeve. That was very much Valkorian, and perhaps the best part of the story for this chapter right there. The timed aspect at the end of the chapter added a bit of a scare for me, especially since some of my abilities didn't always hit. Most of the time, it was my fault that they weren't hitting. It was not the game fault. I was either on the wrong levels, so my smash didn't make contact with it, or I wasn't close enough, or I didn't understand how the things would explode right off the bat. I think if I went through this a second time, especially after learning that there is a passage that connects two of the rooms, yeah, okay, it would be a lot easier, and I would get through it a lot faster. Random problem with the chapter... with all the chapters, actually, is how Valkorian freezes time. I mean, this happens in the first chapter, the second chapter, this chapter. It happens in just about every chapter whenever he's speaking to you. And you will walk, your character will walk forward a couple paces or turn completely around, and then time unfreezes, and no one ever questions it. You're literally teleporting, and no one questions it. What the heck? Also, Valkorian in this chapter does not earn the Best Father of the Century Award. He actually earns the Worst Father of the Century Award, which again does fit in with his personality and makes perfect sense, but I do feel so sorry for Valen sometimes. No, I don't like Valen. Yes, I feel sorry for her. Which is probably the entire point of that aspect is, with Valkorion being who he is, you want to feel sorry for the children, his children. One word to describe this entire chapter: spike. Okay, you guys don't get that unless you actually walked my Let's Play, which I've been using the entire footage for that in the background. The little droid that follows you around at the beginning of the chapter, I had fun and named him Spike. Yeah, okay. Anyways, I loved that little droid. I don't know why. Probably an aspect of the design, the fact that it was just a really cool little droid. It looks so cool, and it looked like a giant spike. Anyways, I had a lot of fun with this chapter. I did love the chapter in and of itself a lot. It was interesting both from the story and lore aspects of it. I do love how Scorpio keeps changing whose side she's on. That is kind of amusing. It is also kind of annoying. She's like, okay, whose side is Scorpio on this chapter? Scorpio. Can't wait to go through this as another character so I see more of aspects of it. Probably not much changes. Anyways, it makes sense if you ever played an agent, especially given what she tries to achieve throughout the storyline as an agent. Her main goal through both expansions as well has been achieving freedom, especially for those like her, and knowledge about where she came from, which are perfectly understandable goals, because I don't think there's a time where someone doesn't wonder, who am I and where do I come from and why am I not free if you were not free? To make my own decisions. Now, the planet in and of itself was a lot of fun to explore and see. I sort of wish, and this is my one regret with the entirety of this chapter, that the planet was actually there to explore in the open world with other players. Yes, you can bring other players into your story with you, but I would love to see this world come to be a playable world at a later date. It would be very nice, but I understand why it has to be delayed. Story reasons, given what happened and so forth. It was also nice to see Vet and Torian getting some FaceTime as companions rather than the usual suspects. I am looking at you, Lana, yes. She hates me so much, mainly because I play light side. But I love Vet. I think she was one of my favorite companions when I played a light side Sith warrior. I loved seeing her return. I even went through as a dark side Sith warrior and romanced her. So I do love seeing her get some more FaceTime. And Torian was nice to see some of him too, even though I keep calling him Lelouch because it's the same actor. But it is nice to see two companions who don't always get a lot of FaceTime get the FaceTime. And it's something I would like to see in later expansions as well, where some of the old companions who are still important to the storyline get a little bit more FaceTime in the actual storyline, more than just the chapter that they enter in. Because it is always nice to have that feeling that you're returning to the old game. Characters like Kira haven't come back recently, and it would be also nice to see them at a later date. But with this chapter, it was so nice to see those two, even if you switched between them fairly quickly. And Spike. Little Spike. It was nice to have them along. It was very reminiscent of the times that I played my Sith warrior and my bounty hunter. This was over the first 4 chapters of Knights of the Eternal Throne. It was the slight review of those 4 chapters. If you guys are interested in the next 5 chapters, it will be in a separate video. If you guys enjoyed this, please leave a like and a comment below. Thank you for watching. This is Flamewing80, signing out.